Welcome. In this video, you will be given your first major tasks of this project, which is to reverse engineer VanillaPress 0.1 showing just the blog posts. Let's take a look at the functionality we want to create. First of all, we want to be able to display a list of post titles and content on a page, pulling it from a JSON object. Then we want the title of the posts to actually be links using the hashtag and then whatever the slug name is that's stored in the JSON file that we're getting our data from. Then when we click on a post title link, it should clear out the content for the main content area and display just the content for that specific post we clicked on. Then when you click on the site title, it will display all of the blog posts again. If you want to take it one step further, you could save and pull the data in and work with it from local storage. Here we could see an example of what you're going to build. You're going to start with a blank page just like this, and then using just the data file in JavaScript to create a page that looks like this, where you'll list out each of the posts one after another and make the title a link in the fashion where the href is going to be hashtag and then whatever the slug is that's saved in the data. And I'll show you this in a minute. You can see hashtag JavaScript learning, etc. Hashtag REST API. So you'll make it a link, and then when you click on one of these items, it will clear out the page and display just the title and content. Now this is stuff that we've done again and again throughout the course, but we haven't really put it into practice in more a polished or larger format like we're seeing here. Finally, the last functionality piece is that when we click on the title here, it should wipe the page and display all of the posts in a list again. So that's the basic functionality. Now let me walk you through the files that you get to start off with. First of all, you're going to get a basic index.html page. There's quite a bit of markup on this page already. You can see we have the site name and descriptions here, and there's IDs which you don't generally need all over the place, but they're really just used to make things faster to work with, but you can also wipe them out and delete them and update this HTML however you like. So this is your basic HTML file. Again, you could change any of this stuff in here. Just know that then you'll have to adapt your JavaScript to have whatever markup that you choose. And finally, at the bottom, we see linked in a data.javascript file and an app.js file. Forgot to mention that there's a style sheet up here at the top. Basic styles applied, although also feel free to change and update that as well if you like. However, the main focus is going to be on starting with this data here. So here's our data.js. Notice that it's just a variable of posts. There's an array of objects inside of it. Stuff that we've seen before. It's just a little thick because there's a lot of properties for each one. And then we're stringifying it at the end. So this will save as JSON.data. And we haven't talked about this aspect of JavaScript so much yet, that when we create information in one file, that information is accessible in another file as long as they're listed after each other. So in the way I'm pulling this in, if I were to move app above data, this would not allow me to access data information in my app file. But when I list it this way, I can. So what that means is that when we go into our app file, we could log out JSON data. Now JSON data appears nowhere here, but in our data file, we do see that it is listed. So what that means is that we're getting our JSON data from our data file, and it's accessible inside of our app.js file. And if we were to open up our console, we'd see this entire string of data saved as a JSON object, which is what you will then use to display out on the page itself. Now let me show you the rest of this app file. Basically, I have a variable here, VanillaPress, with an init method built in, and basically what that allows us to do is you're going to write a lot of code, and some code will reference other code, but you'll probably have to call some of the functions that you create, such as display posts or however you decide to name and work with them. And what you could do is you could put those functions here in this VanillaPress init method, and they will get called to kick off your application. Notice then that below here I say VanillaPress init, and that is what actually runs this. So again, the purpose of this init method that I've created and left for you here is that it is a best practice that when you have some code that you need to run to initialize or to set up or to start off your whole application, you would use this kind of pattern here and create a main init function and then list your stuff in there. And then all the rest of your code will go down below on the lines below here, and you could simply reference it up here and just call the main function or two that you need to start it off. Okay, so again, you have your main index file that's pulling in your data and your app. You could update this, you could change it to work how you want. And then in our data file, you shouldn't really need to change this unless you want to change slug names or title names or add your own information, update dates, you can do that. Otherwise, that's just there for you so you don't have to type it all out. And then finally, our app page, log your main functions here, not log them, but call them here so that it all starts to run. And good luck. So from here, let's go back in and review what it is exactly that we want to do to build out this functionality here that we see, which is going to be the first component, to a much larger application by the time we're done. So again, just to review the assignment here, you want to display the post titles and content, pulling it from the JSON. You want to make those post titles links using the slug name. And then when you click on a post title, you want to clear out all the content, display that single post content, and then when the site title is clicked, it'll wipe it all out and display all the blog posts. Of course, if you want to take that extra step, you could save and pull the data from local storage instead of just from that object there. So here are a few tips for you as you go along. The first is to write functions to do things for you. You're going to have to do a lot of things like creating nodes and passing in text into nodes. So these are things that you could create functions to do for you. Anywhere where you start to see something of, hey, I need to do this again, it might also be at a high level. Say, for example, display all posts or display single post. These might be things that you write functions for and that do a bunch of sub things within it, and then those you're also breaking down into smaller functions as well. So as you're writing, just keep this in mind as a tip. The second is use event listeners. When you're clicking on a link and you want it to do something, the way you're going to tap into that is event listeners, and you will probably want to remember your prevent default action techniques so that that click doesn't actually register with the browser, and instead it just calls your JavaScript, and then you could update the page and do whatever you want with it. So that'll tie in with the functions that you're writing above. And then I'll also say that when we get to looking at the example code and how this project is built out in this course, your code probably won't look the same. However, it may look like a lot of the example files we've looked at up to this point. But when you see the final code, you'll see that we may be implementing things that we haven't talked about in terms of organization or style of coding. That's okay. The core functionality and the core code running it will still be doing the same thing. So just keep that in mind. There's no right or wrong way here at this point. We're just trying to code it out and work on our own to get this done using the knowledge that we already have. So this should probably take you a good hour to several hours to work through. And once you've really had that experience of building it out on your own, then in the next set of videos, we're going to start looking at an example of how we've built this out for this course particularly.